my real calling is to understand human nature and to understand where the human society is going. And I piggyback my investment strategy on the back of it, because there are a lot of differences between how I see the world and how other people see the world. And if I'm correct, I expect to make more money in comparison to other people. So that's where I come from, but my basic drive is to understand the evolution of human society.
So what are your deeply held beliefs about humanity in the sense of being an investor? Clearly, do you think there's an inevitability about it? Do we keep making the same mistakes? Is it human nature? What are the themes that you're looking for?
So, Matthew, I grew up in an extremely wretched, poor, and impossible society, and that is, of course, India. And I was always keen on understanding what was it behind India that made this country so utterly poor and so utterly wretched. And when I was driving across the city where I am in today, there were blind children, blind women trying to beg when it's extremely hot. It's about 45 degrees centigrade. They have lives no better than lives of cockroaches. And over my life, I have tried to understand what is it that makes some countries so poor and some countries so rich. India was more poor than China was 20 years back, 30 years back. Today, China is 5 times as rich as India is on per capita basis. And I really want to understand why is it that these countries are so rich and some other countries are so poor.
So, and what do you put it down to?
I think there's a huge cultural issue. People have to understand that Christian missionaries and European colonizers were God sent to these third world countries. These people tried to change these extremely irrational, tribal, and superstitious people into what I might call a civilization. But they were only successful in a very minor way. And since the departure of European colonizers, every third world country, and the only 2 countries that I can exclude from that are Singapore and Hong Kong, every third world country has continued to deteriorate, and these countries are really imploding. Their institutions are falling apart. Socially, these societies are falling apart because fundamentally, these societies are tribal, superstitious, irrational societies, something that European colonizers and European missionaries managed to make only a small amount of positive difference in. And that positive difference has fallen away because the management is no longer European. These countries need European managements. Without that, these countries will revert back to their Middle Ages, the Dark Ages again. It's a cultural issue, and it takes at least a couple of millennia to change these cultural issues, if at all you can change these cultural issues.
I mean, that's a pretty big statement. If I look at India, where you are today, I think you could argue the last thing that it needs is European type of. You're talking about modern European management, not the colonial past, because I think that's possibly what's holding it back.
No, actually, what India needs is the similar management that this country had during the colonial times. The British and Western people of today are very naive. They have lost the wisdom of ruling the world now. So when I say European colonization, I actually do mean European colonization. They were extremely competent at managing these countries. Today's Europeans are no longer competent. And as you know, I spend a lot of time in Europe and North America, and the degradation has set in the Western society today. They are probably no longer competent to rule these third world countries.
Right. Okay. Well, I guess the only kind of strong leader you would point to in the West would be someone like Donald Trump.
I quite like Donald Trump, but I don't think Donald Trump would be a good person for a country like India. What you needed was people like Winston Churchill or Margaret Thatcher. These are the kind of people India would need to come to a state of sanity. This country is becoming increasingly insane right now.
Right, and you say that because of the chaos around the politics at the moment is very confusing, and it's almost gridlocked in a way in terms of the decision making and implementation. I mean, can you give us some examples of what's going on there?
Well, it is a completely brain-dead leadership today. The leaders that the country has today really don't understand anything. They have no vision, no imagination, and they're not just crooked. They are actually very irrational and I would say rather stupid. So
Right.
they came into positions of power because they were in a position to manipulate an extremely superstitious masses. And these are the masses who only look forward to free stuff. And today, every political party is trying to bid each other in terms of who would offer more free stuff to these people. For example, the Indian Prime Minister, the current Prime Minister, when he came to power, had offered to give every family in India, or perhaps every individual in India, about 22,000 US dollars per person. I repeat, 22,000 US dollar per person, when the GDP per capita of this country is about 2,000 US dollar. So how can he bring that kind of money to this country and give it away for free is something no one on the planet can really create mathematics of. But then today, there's another party, the opposition Congress party, which is offering to give every person about 1,000 US dollar per year. Now, again, compared to the GDP of per capita of $2,000 per year, it is an absolutely impossible amount to give as free stuff in this country. But that's all that happens in this country. There's no vision, there's no focus, there's no rule of law, there is no respect for the individual. It's increasingly a tribal society today.
Right, so as an economist and a commentator, you know, what's driving you to do this? Are you trying to point out that the system's broken, or, you know, have you got a view on how it can be fixed?
This can't be fixed, Matthew. This is far too late now because, as I said, Europeans can no longer return back to rule these countries. When Europeans were ruling these countries, Europeans were more competent, much more competent than they are today. And the populations of the third world was about 1/5 of what it is today. So in terms of proportion of management to the masses of the third world countries, we are way out of shape now. It is impossible to manage these countries. About 5 billion of 7.5 billion people on the planet live in these third world countries. And all these countries are imploding. They will fall apart into tribal units. They will fall apart into situations in which they will forever be in war with each other. And this is where I'm coming from. Now, what this means is that this will create a huge amount of chaos around the world as these countries continue to implode. And what you see is implosion in countries like Syria, and you are starting to see problems in Turkey. You see increasing problem in Venezuela. Pakistan is going to implode over the next couple of years. Middle East will suffer hugely if oil price continues to be where it is, which really means that there's a lot of problems that the third world is looking forward to. Now, IMF and the World Bank sing songs of glory about the third world because according to them, these countries are growing very fast. In my view, it is actually the exact problem of these countries because these countries are tribal and they are becoming rich, which pretty much means that they have more time to create problems. So this increased economic growth of these countries will lead to more problems, not less, in these countries.
So are you saying that these countries are developing, they are getting richer collectively, but not as individuals? People are being left behind, or the masses are being left behind?
There's a huge amount of mismatch between economic growth and cultural, intellectual growth in these people. They have just become more arrogant. Because they have more time, they have become more fanatic and more nationalistic. What you see is a wave of fanaticism and nationalism increasing in all the Southeast Asian countries: Indonesia, Malaysia, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, India, Nepal. The list goes on and on, because these people have more time and they were not really the kind of people who should have made money. What is actually happening is that because they have more money, they have more time to create problems, and they have more access to tools to create troubles in the society. So for now, these people are drunk. They are watching a lot of TV, they are enjoying their cars, but a pleasure-centric society invariably becomes a society that becomes dominated by savagery and barbarism eventually.